Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President and Deputy Chief Content Officer at Black Enterprise, Alisa Gums.
Thank you and good afternoon. We are continuing with our impactful panel discussions with Behind the Brand, hosted by our sponsor, MasterCard. Please take a look.
It took years to build a successful business. When COVID hit, everything changed for me.
Meet Michelle. For years, Michelle has helped empower other entrepreneurs from her boutique in Brooklyn, carrying clothing lines from other Black designers alongside her own.
I see my boutique as a platform for my community, so when COVID struck, I had to pivot because the livelihoods of other artists were at stake. MasterCard Digital Doors helped my business evolve.
MasterCard Digital Doors helps local businesses pivot to digital. It starts with a questionnaire that provides custom solutions.
It felt like someone was listening and helping me write my next chapter.
Michelle received Intuit QuickBooks training, cybersecurity monitoring from Risk Recon, and Salesforce Essentials to help manage customers and inventory.
It was a digital makeover, just what I was looking for.
Months later, Michelle's company is stronger than ever, and her physical storefront is safely reopened, too.
Thanks to MasterCard Digital Doors, I'm ready to overcome anything. When my business thrives, my community thrives too.
Thank you, MasterCard, for your valued partnership. Now let's get right to the discussion. Some of the most creative brains behind the most recognizable brands are going to spill the tea on what it takes when you tackle the often unpredictable world of developing, scaling, and operating a million-dollar company. Joining us is Dia Sims, the CEO of Lobos 1707 Tequila and the former president of Sean Combs Enterprises. Lisa Joseph Metelus, a member of the board and co-head of basketball marketing and servicing at Creative Artists Agency, where she oversees dozens of NBA players. Bonin Bough, the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Group Black and co-founder of Lockstep Ventures. And lastly, our moderator, Danielle P. Jeter, the founder and CEO of the global creative communications firm AOI Events and PR. She is also the founder and president of Women in Media, which is impressively building unity across the globe within the media industry for all women. Please welcome Dia, Lisa, Bonin, and Danielle.
All right, so we're going to spill some tea. I want the audience to be super prepared for this moment, right? So what you have to write with, all of your notes, your cameras, there's billions of dollars of information on the stage. So after we have our awesome discussion, I'll open it up for a Q&A. So at that point, we will transition the room to your questions. But I have a question for the audience first before I get to the panel. And that is, so how many billionaires, let me go back. How many millionaires do we have in the audience? Make some noise, raise your hands, let us know. Okay, so we already got millionaires here. How many aspiring millionaires do we have in the room? Okay, it's getting a little louder. All right, so we got the M's, but what about the B's? How many aspiring billionaires do we have in the room? Okay, panel, I think we're in the right room. All right, so this question is for the entire panel. What is it like building a multi-million-dollar business? Can you briefly tell us your experience and journey?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to start. Hi, everyone. First of all, I think I can speak for us, so we're very excited to be here. So I was fortunate to work with Sean, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Brother Love Combs, whatever you may know him as. I started off as his executive assistant and then was grateful to eventually grow to become the first president of the company. And along that journey, we built a brand called Ciroc Vodka, which if you are over 21, you can indulge in responsibly. But along the way, the truth of the matter was we were, frankly, just grinding so hard, bringing an understanding of culture and really tactics that had been more employed in fashion and music to the spirits world. And we probably didn't look up for about first 3.5, 4 years. I remember distinctly being in a meeting where our partner said to me, like, oh, you know, we just got the numbers. The brand today is worth like a $2 billion retail value brand. And inside, I was like, oh, what? So I tried to have like this cool face, like, yeah, naturally, that's what we do. We build we build billion-dollar brands. Who knew? But like, I left, and like both Puff and I were like, oh my God, like, we did it. So frankly, it was not that intentional in terms of, and don't get me wrong, obviously Puff is about maximum impact, requited respectful relationships with the culture. But what we really wanted to build was an example of why diversity is good for business. And frankly, building a billion-dollar brand was a byproduct of that, and it's one that we love to see more industries employ.
Thank you, Dia.
Sure.
Nice. Well, for me, I have the pleasure of working with Dwayne Wade, who we've been partners for about 18 years, alongside my role at CAA, and we'll get into this more later. But having, you know, the firsthand glimpse of how we launch businesses, whether it's through D. Wade Cellars, our wine that has done extremely well over the last 5 years, to our recently launched Proudly with Dwayne and Gabrielle that will be in Target, focusing on babies of color. We've been through so many iterations of launching businesses and brands, and for us it's been amazing to see the growth and also to learn from our failures.
What's up, Philly? How are you? Are you good? Are you good? Come on, what a beautiful crowd.
Yes.
Black entrepreneurs, so proud. Thank you, Black Enterprise. It only took 10 years to bring me back to your stage. Appreciate it. You know, it's interesting. So I've had kind of both sides of the experience. So for those that don't know, I was Chief Digital Officer of PepsiCo for many, many years. And then I was Chief Media and E-commerce Officer for Mondelez, which used to be Kraft Foods, so like Oreos, Wheat Thin, Stride, Trident, Triscuit. So I ran the marketing for those brands and our investments across the globe. And so I think that was different because those were already billion-dollar businesses. And what was hard was to find the next $1 billion. And I think to that point, diversity was a huge part of kind of where we leaned, or I tried to push the organization, and that was more also a culture. And the reality is that, you know, this room shapes culture. And so, and in many respects, by I mean, even when we took Oreo and showed culture through the eyes of an Oreo, we took Oreo to a growth trajectory that they had never seen before. And so I think to that point, there's such a huge opportunity to continue to prove that the power that we bring to the table from a cultural perspective is actually what drives economic value in so many ways. And so that's kind of, I guess, that experience is now, that's a big organization, so there's that. When I left there, I thought I was kind of done, and then I met Rich Lou Dennis, who some of you might know, some of you might not. Shea Moisture, I'm sure all of you know. As you can tell, I might know it some days, I'm not. And it was interesting because this was the first time in my life that I had walked in and saw a $200 million black-owned, family-owned business. And I was ashamed at 36 years old or 38 years old that have been in the boardrooms that I've been in to have never seen something that looked like this. When we talk about unicorns, this is like, it's like finding a dragon. Like a unicorn is just a zebra with a horn on it. Like this is something that is mythical, and it made me realize, you know, that if I hadn't seen it, many of us don't get a chance to see it, but watching that business build or being a part, so I stepped in as chief growth officer in that business. And what was interesting there was, this wasn't about tapping into culture, this was about we are culture, and the community that was created around it continuing to create culture. And it was something very powerful watching that happen. And so I think that the two learnings is, yes, there's opportunities to happen to culture, but more importantly, I think when you're trying to build real brands, it's building a community around it that are gonna bring you guys to the next level.
Community, that stuck out for me. So Bonin, you bring up a really good point. And so I want to talk about, you know, there's a popular saying that we always say, know your value, know your worth. Can the panelists tap into, like, what exactly does that mean?
I'm ladies first, I feel that. I'm still trying to figure out,
This is critically important, especially if you're in the beginning of your journey, I think. Especially when you just like look at the math of it. So I was fortunate to have been trained in negotiations straight out of college by the Department of Defense. It probably was the best grounding for everything I would do after, whether it was negotiating, you know, $500 million deals, or whether it's negotiating with my 9-year-old, right? It was something that we should all learn, and it shouldn't have been, I just kind of happened into it, but frankly, everybody in first and second grade should start to learn how to be persuasive, right? How to drive your point. Really, you have to sharpen that skills when you talk about knowing your value and ensuring that you are getting a commensurate return. And also just the comfort of, there is nothing wrong with the exchange of a dollar's pay and a dollar's day of work, and getting real comfortable with talking about that exchange. Cash is somewhat arbitrary, and I won't get to a conversation about what it means to have an economy. But no different than trading silver for services or fish for gold, right? It's important that you first get real comfortable with just having a conversation and establishing your value. You have to teach people how to treat you, and that requires teaching people how to pay you. And I would only add one additional point is, it's hard to make changes in existing centuries-old organizations. The thing that actually thrills me to see the word entrepreneurs up here, which I think is the most underutilized tool in civil rights at our disposal. If you're not being, right, like if you're not getting your value, you may have to go out and create your commensurate value. The statistics show that the average white American is worth 13 times what the average black American is worth in the US today. But if you extrapolate, if you pull out business owners, any kind of business owners, you don't have to own Amazon, you can own your local nail salon, that multiple drops to 3x. That's today, standing on centuries of inequity. Imagine if we were so intentional, right, about going out and becoming more and more entrepreneurs. All of us on this stage are owners in a multitude of businesses, and I think that's the quickest way to really establish your value.
Bonin, I have another question for you. So
I just prepared my answer for that one. What do you mean?
I think Dia did a great job with that one, right?
I'm not backing that up. Everything she said.
It's getting really good, right? And I want to make sure that we get as much out as possible. So I've done some research as well as far as what is truly holding back women-owned and black-owned businesses from scaling to millions. So before I reveal my research, Bonin, what do you think is holding us back?
I mean, it's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of systemic issues. So when you really look at just the amount of investment that actually goes, capital investment that goes into black-owned businesses, I mean, historically, you know, it's less than 1%. So, I mean, when you're really talking about how you get big, like, it's taking capital. But I think that there's a lot of other pieces. There's an absence of the education and knowledge about capital even exists. Then you have the issues where lending, you know, are huge challenges. And then I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges is we don't operate as a community. And so I think that, I'm just being honest. I mean, look, let me give you a thing. You know, there's a female black-owned company right now that's being attacked, right? And even better, I'll give you Shea Moisture. When at Shea Moisture, we had 28% market share in black hair care. Just to give you a sense of how big that is. Dove has 24%. Dove, in soap, the biggest soap company in the world, 24%. So we were beating them by far. We couldn't grow anymore in share. By the way, this is black people buying our product, because if you think about it, the other 72% were being bought, which were not black owned, were being bought by our own community. And I'm not blaming that. Like, if that's the product you use, I get it. We made a conscious effort and said, if order for us to grow, we're going to move into general market hair care. Give you a sense. If we got to 1% of general market hair care, 1%, it would be twice as much as what we were doing in black hair care. We made the move. The entire community was like, oh my God, that's it, forget about it. So basically we told ourselves, it's okay for them to come and take our money, but God forbid we go and take theirs. And so I think that the community doesn't support the actual true growth or understand the levers that actually grow businesses and allow businesses to actually get to scale. So that's kind of where I think.
So you said there's levels to grow the business, right?
There's levels to this game.
Can we break down some of those levels, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
I mean, I can chime in. I mean, it's a little bit different for me, and I see it on both sides, because when you have a celebrity or well-known person,
right,
obviously you're already jumping ahead. But just because you're jumping ahead, your product has to sustain whatever kind of recognition and support that you get. You have to maintain your consumers. You have to be able to really stand by what you make. And for us, that's truly important. When we get involved in the brand, it really is, for us, the number one thing is what's authentic to us. What do we really care about? How do we create an economic system around the brand? And that goes into community, philanthropy, like what are the stories that we can tell? But I've also seen it on the other side. My sister, who is an entrepreneur, started a skincare company, Donata Skin Food, out of my kitchen, you know, and watching her levels of growth, where she now owns 3 warehouses in Miami, and how she, when we talk about what are some of the issues in black-owned women businesses, resources, picking your right partners, picking the right investment dollars. I remember at one point she called me and she's like, hey, I have this celebrity who's going on a reality show and she wants to buy my formula, because everybody's promoting stuff on a reality show. You know, the money sounds good, but ultimately she chose not to go down that route because, listen, I'm not for sale. My formula is not for sale, and I'm invested in my own business. So not even every investment dollar that comes is a good, is the route to go. So like we said, there's so many different levels to it. I've seen it on both sides, and it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Lisa. So to get to the
Wait, what happened to your research?
Oh yeah, we want to hear it.
Okay. Thank you. Here is the research, right? So I have a historian background studying at Spelman, so I'd love to do my research. And what I found that is missing in 6 areas is mindset, mm-hmm, marketing,
yep,
branding, sales, systems, and funding.
Yeah.
Does that sound about?
Heavy on the systems. And systems, yes, yeah.
And then we talked about the funding, right? Having access to capital.
Access to
Well,
dollars.
that's
right
really
dollars.
the underpinning, yeah. And but the mindset's not a small thing. I think it's important too that there's still a myth that like you can work really hard and become a billionaire. Like that's not really accurate. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like my parents are crazy smart, but no one taught me about the stock market. I didn't really learn until like my late 20s. I'm 46, right? So like if you don't actually understand or are exposed to certain things, you're going to be going in the most inefficient route to garner wealth. I think is the first thing. And the second thing is just a mindset of actually investment, where just if you're a community that's always trying to race to get to zero because you're at -50 because of systemic things, then the idea of like parting with cash is very different. There are the communities who are fighting over, well, it's my time to make an investment. How would you let me know? Where we don't have that freedom just yet. We just don't have that freedom yet. And I think, like, you know, Jay-Z popularizes it, perfectly encapsulates as you talk about being crabs in a barrel. The question is actually, why are crabs in a barrel to begin with? Like, we're not supposed to be in a barrel. So that's the actual issue.
And I would just say on the marketing and branding side, I think that was one of the verticals. I mean, the reality is launching a business 10, 15 years ago versus now, I mean, you're able to do that if you do it the right way. Social media gives everybody the opportunity to be their own marketer. And so how you go about that, how do you go about telling your story, representing your brand, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram, and that's something as a entrepreneur you have, like that's probably one of the first things that you now have to embrace, because you don't need to be on primetime TV spending millions of dollars advertising. You're growing your audience on your own and really controlling your own narrative.
Thank you for that, Lisa. You good? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about the mindset, right? So what is the mindset of being a millionaire, and what has those conversations been like amongst your experience in communities?
I'm happy to quickly say, I think first and foremost, like, we should be in pursuit of, not to get all Pollyannish, we should be in pursuit of being happy first and foremost, right? Like, so that's the most important thing. That's really what this game is about. But don't make the mistake in believing that, like, the more money is going to give you the access to get quicker, to be a little bit happier, just because it's going to unlock doors, and most importantly, it's going to unlock freedom. So to me, the way I think about why it's important to have millions or be is because it's freedom. I think we just, I don't know if I can say we came out of a pandemic, but when we think about the times, there were times when we were all in quarantine where, my husband and I, we were doing deep research on, like, we may have to just move to Medellin, or we may have to move to Panama because it's just, I don't know, I don't even feel safe. And I don't ever want to be in a position where we don't have the freedom. So I think the importance of the mindset is unlocking legacy for people around you. Even if you're not having future generations, it's still legacy for the community. It's legacy for us as a culture. And it's also giving yourself the freedom to make the choices that you want to make for your best health, right? For your best mental health, for the decisions you want to make for people that you love. Those decisions and the ability to be free are really hand in hand with your financial independence.
Yeah, I think from a mindset perspective, it's, I think we have to remember that there are legacy challenges, but those legacy challenges can't be the bonds that stop us from accomplishing what we need to accomplish. So yes, those exist, but now I'm going to put those out of my mind, and I'm going to stay laser focused on what I need to accomplish, and I'm not going to let that even enter into my psyche or my mind. Going through corporate America, I face that all the time. So, I'll give you an example. We were reviewing all of our media agencies around the globe, and I had to go to each of our markets. And I walk into the Indian market, and the largest media agency, and the independent, and the owner. And I came in with a guy named Josep, tall Catalonian guy. The owner walks right up to Josep and goes, "Bonin, it's so good to meet you." And I'm like, and then Josep is like, "Well, actually, this is Bonin." It was impossible. Like, he couldn't believe it. Now I could be upset, or look, I'm here to do business. Let's get this over with. I could care less about what your biases are. Here's what my goals are. So I think that's first and foremost, is we can't let those things cloud our vision. And then I think the other thing is we always have to come into it with a challenger mindset, regardless of whether we're coming from a challenger position, a challenger mindset, because that means that you're trying to outthink, not outwork, not outspend, but literally outthink. And that's where I think is the most important. When they zig, we have to zag. Like, how do we find those ways to create exponential value in unique ways that have never been done before? And I think that, to be quite frank, as a people, I think we're really good at that. And so I think that if we hone those as we build our business, that's how, you break through and win. And to your point, like, you guys said, oh wait, we crushed fashion like this? These liquor guys aren't doing that. Let's go.
Lisa, did you want to add anything to the
No,
mindset?
they covered it all.
Okay, so Bonin brought up a very, very good point about the fact that it's about outthinking, like not outworking, like Dia said, but having that mindset to, okay, how can I think about things? And when I, have looked at the stories of like a Bill Gates and to see how he spends his time to like literally sit down and just close out distractions and have those quiet weekends where he's just writing or he's just literally just reading. So thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you got to grind. Like, you got to grind, but you got to be out thinking and grinding.
Because with the thinking comes the strategy as well.
Yeah.
Right? So, perfect. Okay. So, there's a lot of disappointing statistics that share that Black-owned and women-owned businesses remain sole proprietors and only employ one person in the business. And one thing I know is you can't scale to millions without having people in your business and just being a one-woman or one-man show. So can you talk to us about the fundamentals of building a team, being an effective leader, and what the audience members needs to know to prepare to hire staff?
Well, first you need money for that. That would solve all. But then once you get past that point, I think it's picking the right people.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times we have to figure out what are the skill sets that we really need. And sometimes from a small business standpoint, we can't afford to go out and hire a CEO or a marketing strategist, but really taking the time to find people who believe in you as well and is willing to take that risk and journey with you is important. But ultimately, we got bills to pay, we got money to make. So for me, what I've seen just in whether it's my sister's journey or, by the way, the same struggles that we have even on the celebrity side is really figuring out what are the skill sets and what you need to build a really great team. This rain is insane.
Is that what that is?
Is that the
I'm
rain?
like,
Oh,
that's
man.
so
I think that's the rain.
distracting. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my
that's the
God.
Tense. You must be giving a word in here.
Good thing we're outside.
We're going to be stuck here for a while, guys, so get some questions ready.
For me, I think the team is absolutely everything. I've been fortunate. I've been working with some of the same people who I worked alongside with to build, Ciroc for many years, and now we're having great success with building a tequila with LeBron James called Lobos 1707. I think the most important thing too is to come with a respectful mindset. I think sometimes it's hard, when you're by yourself, to think anybody else knows anything, but it's actually easier to edit than to innovate every single thing. And if you are the only person that knows how to do everything, it is a surefire recipe for something to fail, either your body or your business. So you have got to trust other people. I always say everyone has something to learn, everyone has something to teach. And I think it's important that when you build your team, you're respectful, right, of what each of those skills are. I also think it's important, like as an entrepreneur, it's not that easy, to your point, right?
Yeah.
The hardest thing to do is get your first $1 million. So sometimes you may want to go back to like, what's the barter? I always encourage, look around your crew. Hopefully you're not, I'm a marketing expert and all my 8 friends are marketing experts. Like hopefully you have a diverse skill sets, or if not, go out and find them and figure out like, I got this, accounting. I'll give you 3 hours on Saturday. Can you give me 3 hours? Until you can get a full team, try to build a community where you can skill swap, right, to build your company.
I think that's the most important thing. And I think people also finding people who aren't like you, who are actually diametrically different in the way that they approach the world, because if you think about, it's like building a baseball team, a basketball team, not everybody has the same skills, and you don't want them to have the same skills. Everybody has to play a role. And then I think the other piece you said, which is, I think the hardest thing for entrepreneurs is to let go.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, like I watch it all the time. It's span of control. Like in order to scale, to get big, you have to trust other people. Yeah. And think about if you're like a CEO and you're running a 112,000 person company. By the time you get to that point, you have to be able to say, I want cherry Pepsi. Like, you don't know if it's, by the time it gets down here to the store, you have no clue, you know? You just hope that it's like a game of telephone, but you have to trust the people at every single level and be willing to give up, or else you won't give up that control, or else you won't get there. And I think that's the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to do in the very beginning.
And yeah, I'll also add, and kind of tapping into that is, I'm not a big fan of like mixing family with business, but I've seen in my own family that actually works. You got to know who your family is. You know what I mean? So, you know, utilizing the resources around you. You know, as my sister was building her company, she hired my dad to pack the boxes for all the products that go out. She hired her daughters, who are 21, 22. They're the ones creating the reels. I mean, they are defining, they're millennials and Gen Zers, and they're the ones defining culture. So tapping into the people that you can trust to really help grow your business is something that I've seen personally help her become successful.
And I think that's really beautiful too, to see black families who actually can do business together, and they start to create that legacy, and they bring in, you know, like you said, the young ones, and then they extend it. And even just here at Black Enterprise, how this is a family-led legacy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, and I just think it's great. So just staying on the topic of like teams and building and leadership, each of you have worked with other greats. You've worked for them, with them, building together. Can you really talk about that experience and how that also has aided to building these multi-million-dollar businesses?
Repeat the first part of the question.
Work with greats, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I can repeat the question.
Yeah.
So each of you understand the importance and value of studying and learning under other
gotcha.
greats. So working for others, serving your way to the top. Can you talk about that experience and how that aids to making a multi-million-dollar business?
Yeah, listen, I worked with Puff for 14 years, and I still consider him like a brother today. And it's really like a master class in entrepreneurship, right? So he is a true visionary and had 500 good ideas every day, right? To the point of, we ain't talking about founder focus, that's another panel. And really my job was to distill what made sense within our lifestyle footprint, what could I operationalize, what could be profitable, what could we scale, and figure out, I would always say we had a soar with our strengths model, where we would know precisely what we were good at, and then partner up with the best-in-class partner to do what they were great at. And we knew how to drive like the first night of the movie, but then I was like, well, I don't know necessarily about construction, right? So I need to get the best partner for that, as an example. I think the one single learning I would attribute to that particular experience, and I think we've all been fortunate to work with so many visionaries and luminaries, was a level of audacity and confidence in our value. I think I was always, kind of grew up very clear of the contributions of our community to commerce, but Puff is like sharpening your skills to another level of like, no, we need to go, whatever you're thinking, triple it and add tax, because you don't understand how what we are going to do is going to reverberate around the world. And I take that with me forever.
That was a bar right there. That spoke a lot of volume, right? He understands the power of his brand. He understands the value that he brings to the table, and there's no room to compromise that.
Right.
So that's a great scaling lesson too.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, most of my work involves athletes, and I've been fortunate enough to work with somebody who's won 3 championships. So we bring a championship mentality. And I think
Let's go.
A big part of it is what we've already talked about, right? Building the right team, knowing what you don't know, and to Dia's point, finding the right partners to bring that to the table. For us, it's, you know, there's no like ceiling for us. We just continue to think about, look for white spaces. Where can we jump in? What makes sense for us? I'll use, you know, proudly as an example. Dwayne and Gab had their door to Cavia, and outside of products like Shea Moisture, you go into the aisles of Walmart or Target, and it's like there really isn't anything that is targeting our brown babies, whether it's diapers, whether it's skincare, any of that. And so for us, we're like, okay, this is an opportunity where we can own this brand. And we partnered with really great investors and launched it. And it's right now direct to consumer on the website. But this is real. This is something that we're dealing with right now. Kavya was in diapers. It didn't always work. Why do we always have to go to Huggies and Pampers and Honest, which is all great companies, but it's time for us to build our own. And that's the strategy and how we view things.
So you all are putting the Pamper brand on the shelves right now?
It will be launched this fall in Target. You'll see end caps of diapers. Right now we just launched the skincare lotion, we launched the body oil, and the baby wash. And that all literally just stemmed from them saying, hey, there's really not, we need options. You know, I want to be able to go in, and if I want Huggies, because that's what works for my kid, great, but I also, there's Proudly as well. And so even in thinking how we wanted that messaging and picking the word proudly was something that was really important to us, because as our people, we are proud of our ancestors, our bloodlines, our legacy, and we want that to, you know, be showcased and be part of our storytelling even in our baby care product.
We making moves out here, so we now have a new Black product coming to the shelves that we can shop very soon. So make sure y'all keep that in mind.
Can I just say one thing on that?
For sure.
And this is just, you know, in 1999, I went on an interview, and there was a Harvard Business Review magazine on the table. And after the interview, I just kind of like snatched and was like, okay, what's this? And in there, I read that the mark of a great number one is where their number two goes to lead. And so basically leaders create leaders. And you know, by the way, I never got a business degree. I have every single HBR since 1999. That became my business degree. But I took that with me forever. And as I think about the people that I've had a chance to work with, their superpower was giving me the air cover to do it my way, like go take the hill. I'm not going to tell you to take the hill, but if you need an airstrike, I'm here for you. But giving me the air cover to do that, but also making sure that they were helping turn me into a leader. And I think that's, from me, my experience has been, that's been the best thing about the people that I've had a chance to work with, is that they're focused on doing that.
That's really great insight as well. So what can audience members learn from major corporations and million-dollar companies about marketing? And how can they adapt that to their strategies and techniques today?
Nothing.
Nothing? Do it our way.
No, I mean, it's different. You know, I think they're smarter than even the larger companies. I mean, the larger companies, in many respects, can throw money at the problem. But I think the thing to learn, I actually think the things to learn would be a little bit of discipline, right? So discipline around messaging, discipline around, you know, focus, and also knowing that if you choose your North Star, sticking with it enough. If your instincts tell you that this is the right thing, sticking with it enough until you get it right, and not, you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's not working immediately, so I got to move, and then you know. And I think that big organizations do that very well. You know, they choose something and they stick with it. And then I think, you know, again, it's hard to say, because I feel like the small guys zig and zag better, or, you know, find unique places to go where there's opportunity, where the big guys, again, just throw money at it. But it'd be interesting to hear other folks, because I feel like the small guys bring a whole different perspective to the ball game, which later on the big guys actually copy. So.
Yeah, I think in general, right? I know you could all learn this. There's a piece around listening that's really important, right? Like, I think this is actually the best part of social media. Like, I've been around long enough to remember you put a television ad in a big TV show and you hope that it worked, right? But it's very different when you could actually just go out and say, do you guys like blue or red? And then change your plan in the real time, right? So I think the opportunity to listen and engage, we all talked about family. Even if you don't work with your family, you have a built-in focus group. You got 6 ideas. You don't have to go with it. You may just be like, people don't have the vision, but at least get the information and be a good listener, right? And figure out how you want to move forward. And the only other thing I would add to the point of consider your community to actually have an opportunity to a lot of things that that already exist, right? What can corporations learn from you is the narrow focus. You know, like my first GM used to say, narrow focus yields broad results. When you have a community that loves something very specifically, right? It's the left-handed golf women's community. they really care, right? You can go to the whole golf world, but they may not listen to you. But if you're like, we really heard your problems, and how y'all were getting a little cut because they never have your right clubs, and the things don't sit right because you're a woman on your back, and you really care and you have the discipline for that community, a lot of times other people outside of that community will be like, damn, listen to how they listen, they care, they were prescriptive, they were intentional, and you can grow larger to a larger market if you start with a narrow focus. And that's what a lot of corporations have wrong, and it's actually an opportunity for us to excel.
I mean, they hit it on the head. Know your audience, understand them. I mean, we have tools nowadays that you have to pay a lot of money for back in the day, but you can track your engagement online. You can see what resonates with people. You can see what posts people are engaged with. You can ask questions, create surveys on IG. People can share your story so easily. So all of that are super tools that you should have in your toolkit, and just work the hell out of it.
Yeah, facts.
Awesome, awesome. And I quote, "If there isn't enough room, we build a bigger table. There's always room. The world's abundant. We'll make more room." So those are wise words spoken by Dia Sims. And I would love for Dia to kind of break that down. Like, what inspired those words?
So this is our motto at Lobos 1707 Tequila. We say, if there's not enough room at the table, we will build a bigger table, right? And we tried to build the company from day one with that approach. We're purposely 50% women, we're 60% ethnically diverse, we're majority minority owned, and we tripled our forecast this year because of that, not in spite of it.
Triple.
Yeah. And the short of it is, I think it's really important. There has been this, we've all been, as a country, as a world, talking about DEI for the last few years at the highest it's ever been. If it was a word bubble, it would be huge, right? But there's a thought that it's a game of musical chairs. And what I often say is, it's not. It's about building a bigger table. If you're doing it right, all of the research bears this out. The biggest consultancy firm, McKinsey, they will show you this. If you are actually approaching diversity with the right approach, it always results in more retention, more innovation, and more cold hard cash, right? So when I talk about building a bigger table, it's not 100% just altruistic, right? It's good for your heart, but it's good for your wallet when you're doing it right.
Thank you, Dia. Okay, so Lisa, can you talk to us about your impactful work at CAA AMP, AMP?
Yes.
And so I know it's an award-winning brand that is a consulting division under CAA, which, by the way, I wanted to work at CAA. They came to Spelman, and I went to the recruitment. And it was a dream deferred. It's an awesome company, right? So from your experience with this initiative, tell us a little bit more about this initiative and any advice that you have for the millionaires out here today.
I mean, for me being at CAA, I really have I've been there now for 12 years, and figuring out where the holes are. When we talk about DEI, CAA is another agency that is white men led, predominantly white, and in the height of 2020, there was an opportunity to join the board. There was an ask, and I took the opportunity, even though I knew, this is when you want to ask, that's a whole nother conversation we can talk about another day. But it's like, what can I bring in that can impact our colleagues of color that is there now, and to build a bigger table and bringing other people in. And so for me, CAA AMP was one of those services that I thought we needed. We had a brand consulting group that represents the biggest blue chip brands in the world. And we're leaving money on the table because we don't know how to talk to this audience, who we refer to as the new majority. These are our culture creators. These are our millennials, our Gen Zs. We don't know how to communicate with them. Yes, we can activate a brand with MasterCard and know how to do big activations around them, but what about specifically the African American community? So for CAA, I saw it as a business opportunity, because they're hiring probably other agencies down the street that can do that work, and we can do it too.
Gotcha.
And so that was part of bringing in more diverse talent that was hired specifically to lead this service. And that was also for CAA and most corporations, it's all about the money. And how is this going to add to our revenue? And that was one way where they weren't seeing that path, but it also allowed us to create that path that was a win-win for both sides.
So as you created this path, what are some of, I guess, maybe major takeaways that we can think about too as we're building our companies?
It just goes back to what I said before. Where are the opportunities? Where do you see? For me, that's a perfect example. Like even inside of a corporation, I saw there was an opportunity that we weren't tapping into. So even in the small businesses, as an entrepreneur, what are the services that other companies aren't thinking about? What are the needs that aren't being met by the consumers? And sometimes you could just tap into yourself and realize like, oh, there isn't this product out there, or I can be doing, I should create this, and jumping in on that. It's not easy. It's hard for me because we're dealing with corporations and personalities that have millions of dollars. But I think trying to really identify what the right opportunity is really key for us.
Awesome, thank you. So Bowen, this question is for you, and then the entire panel can chime in as well. So to get to the multi-million-dollar level and even billion-dollar status, does industry or niche matter? Are some industries more destined for success than others?
Different industries have different sizes. I think you said it best, which is, really understanding the community that you're serving and being maniacal about delivering for them, and then you can build on the successes of that. But I think that every industry has opportunity. I look at the world as every industry has opportunity. You just have to find what that opportunity really is, Again, think about hair care. Like you could have said, oh, hair care, everybody's servicing it, but, Shea Moisture chose a different route and said actually, and it's not even just, it's not even just a different route, a whole consumer that was just being left out. I'll tell you, we launched a fund called Lockstep, and Lockstep's goal, so of course in the wake of a lot of stuff that we all saw, a friend of mine called me and we were talking, he's like, Bonin, I need to understand what's going on. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're from Queens, you understand exactly what's going on. Two, it's been a long few days, and he said, no, I really want to figure out how we can have impact, and so I said, let me call you back. So I thought about it, and so we launched a fund, and I said, look, there's a real opportunity here. So we launched a fund, it's aimed at African-American founders, and I said, but we're going to focus on 4 areas. We're going to focus on criminal justice reform, we're going to focus on healthcare outcomes, education reform, and financial literacy. And we're going to focus on things that a lot of times, and we're going to focus on founders that are not on the coasts, but founders that are in the middle where they don't have access to capital. And we're going to take the guys that aren't ready with a deck, we're going to take and put scaffolding around them and build them to be ready for venture. And by the way, even better if they already have, the inklings of a business and they're not just raising, they don't have friends and family, which by the way, it's like, oh, that's how you start a business, raise friends. I'm like, well, my friends and family are trying to get gas money, so I don't know if they're really, and so like, so we don't have those access. And I said the reason why is because those entrepreneurs that have gotten, even if their business is just starting, they are willing to bite their arm off and beat you with it because they didn't have another route to go. And so how do we find those entrepreneurs? And also if you're in those spaces, that means you really care about those spaces. And my whole thing was, and like I'll give you an example of a business that we're looking at that is tackling it totally differently. A guy named Mikey Likes It. Mikey likes ice cream. Some people might, exactly, right? So you guys know Mikey, right? So here's Mikey, formerly incarcerated, comes out. Nobody would employ him, so he started an ice cream shop, as one does, I guess. But this is like the hottest ice cream shop, like Beyonce and like what the? But he said, look, I have a dream. I want to build ice cream shops in places where there are large prisons, because this way, when you come out, at least you can get a job first, so you can build some wealth or some money in your pocket, and then you don't immediately go back to the place where where you came from with no money. So really what you're doing is attacking recidivism. And we said, wow, okay, if we could turn you into an e-commerce business, but be Ben and Jerry's of this generation, we could actually have impact in recidivism. And the only reason why I say that is because most venture folks will not look at a business like that and say, there's a huge economic opportunity for me. And by the way, and that's what our whole thing is, it has to have outsized returns. We're playing the same game that VCs are, but we're playing it with entrepreneurs that nobody else will bet on. But also, we have social impact. So when we look back, we've actually changed the world and made a shitload of money. Yes. And so I guess my point is, there's opportunity everywhere. You just need to figure out what it is and how to unlock it.
Yep.
Perfect. Ladies?
Oh, I'm not following that up. He's got it.
Okay, so we all know and love the song, More Money, More Problems. So talk to us about, as we're building our multi-million-dollar businesses, our billion-dollar companies, what are some of those challenges and struggles that maybe we can anticipate and try to prepare for?
I mean, the only single thing I would call out is just what I mentioned earlier, is like, you can't be so singularly focused on cash that you sacrifice your health, like your friends and your family. The whole point of it all is meant to be to have the freedom to have great times, right? To have wonderful times, take care of yourself, to do that run, to eat the right food, to have better stuff. So if you get so singularly focused on cash and you're on some type of Daffy Duck syndrome and you end up clutching your cold hard cash at 73 by yourself, that's not actually the mission, right? The mission is to figure out how to invest, frankly, not just for yourself, and this is unfortunately wildly like an anti-American sentiment, but we really should actually be helping each other along the way, again, because it actually is a good investment. So when you're looking at something so pure like, oh, I'm gonna put $1 in and get $5 out, but actually when you're doing things right and you have a happier society, it helps all of us. It helps us have lower taxes. It helps us have less people in the emergency room, right? So like, we gotta think bigger about how our individual contributions make all of us better, and when all of us are better, we have a happier society. And that, to me, when you're on your road to being a millionaire and a billionaire, is to make sure you're not so singularly focused on just the cash.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, when someone nails it.
Okay. All right, so at this time, we will take a few questions from the audience.
That was important.
And again, these are questions from the audience. So there's a microphone right here in this middle row. So I'm gonna ask that you just ask your question, and the panelists will answer.
Peace, family. My question is for Mr. Bough, but I believe anyone can answer this question. You said in an interview back in 2019 that mission-driven organizations need to be great at storytelling. But in a world of bite-sized attention spans, what is the best way for organizations to tell their story today?
Bite-size. No.
Boom, I'm out.
Yeah, but I think that, but connecting it to some type of human emotion and with purpose. But I think in a bite-sized world, you just have to create bite-sized pieces. But the reality is that the nature of the actual content doesn't really change. It's just you have to figure out how to do it in a shorter way. My dad was a photographer, and he focused on what was called the decisive moment. And his whole goal was to tell a story in one shot, a complete story in one shot. So it's possible to do anything, but if you just have to paint to the canvas that's available, I guess.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
How y'all doing? Thank you for all the gems y'all gave. First and foremost, let's give it up for them. Like, you do that? Bonin, been studying for a while, seeing everything you've been doing, Cleveland Hustles, KAI 11. And I also just wanted to ask you, when it comes down to the brands that you would take on to like mentor or uplift, black-owned brands, like what are you really looking for those brands?
Again, I think you bet on the jockey, not on the horse. So it's not about the idea as much as it's about who's behind the idea. Yes. And so that's what we look for, is a founder truly serious about winning. And we try to find those folks that, and you can tell through conversation, I think, and exchange. I do like a good idea, don't get me wrong. I mean, a horrible, but I guess that's what I've learned.
Investing in people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, good afternoon. I just wanted to know, both of you ladies mentioned working with like LeBron James, Diddy, Dwayne Wade, and how they're able to tap into this market. I just wanted to know, what advice do you have for like us small business folks who are also trying to maybe coordinate, link up with some of these major stakeholders? That's all. Thank you.
Great question. I would say, you know, first of all, these guys have become entrepreneurs in their own right, creating their own businesses. And a big part of even their brands is investing in Black-owned businesses. And so we get proposals all the time. We get opportunities to invest all the time. And it comes down to, you know, what we look for is investing in the people. First and foremost, is this someone who we really believe in? Because all the other ancillary things, we can help bring that to the table, the right marketing strategy and the right team. But for us, it's really about the people. So I would just say, if you have an idea, if you have a company, that you reach out and make sure you just put your best foot forward as much as you can. Make sure your deck is on point. Make sure your story is right. But we're looking at stuff all the time and deciding, first it has to align with what they believe in. It has to align with what their passion points are as well. But there's always an opportunity, and guys are, at least the ones like that we work with, whether it's Dwayne Wade or Carmelo Anthony or Chris Paul, there's a constant influx where they come in and they provide dollars to support businesses. It's definitely something that there's an opportunity there.
That's awesome.
Oh, this is so bright. Hi, everyone. I want to ask my question directly to Lisa. My name is Jasmine August. I've been at the league office for 5.5 years, and I have been unable to transition into that role where I really feel like I can add value to the players in the league. Lisa, I've seen you at All-Star Weekend, killing it, seen you in the back, like, know you're a total boss and have looked up to you. So I want to know, how have you been able to navigate this space and be successful?
That's a really long story. So let's get together after this panel. We'll talk.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Soraya Nicole. Thank you guys for being here, and congratulations to your success. I wanted to ask you guys, when it comes to balancing the success that you have, is there a morning routine that you have or a special self-care practice that you all do? Thank you.
This is my favorite question, so I'll take this one. I think work-life balance, I think for women at least, is a mirage, and you will die of thirst trying to get there. And then maybe 100 years from now, things will be changed. But right now, and I often say this, is I try to, instead of, basically, like, if you're trying to juggle all the balls in the air, you're doing what clowns do, right? And my point is, like, I'm not in the business of being a clown. What I try to do instead is think about being in a batting cage and be in the moment that I'm in. So if I'm with my 9-year-old daughter in the park, I'm trying to put my phone away, we're gonna come up with terrific stories, we're gonna have a great time in that moment. But if I'm in a room, you know, negotiating a deal, I'm all the way in that room. And so I try to just, whatever's in front of me, I'm gonna knock that thing out as best as I can. Because this vicious cycle of movement but no forward, like, projection, you just be an octopus on roller skates, flailing about but not getting anywhere.
Being present.
I love reading the articles about what successful people do as their daily routine. I wake up at 5 a.m., I go for a jog, I write in my journal, and I'm like, I don't know how you can do that. Kudos to you. That is not my life. It is a struggle every day. But to Dia's point, that's exactly my approach. It's when I am in mom mode, I am in full mom mode. And, you know, oftentimes you may have to juggle a little bit, but when I'm in work mode, I'm in full work mode. And you know what? Sometimes the mom thing slips through the cracks a little bit. And I have to be okay with that, because the reality is, like, this is not perfect. There's no, like, perfect schedule and perfect day. You're a mom, you're a wife, I mean, the other day I just felt like I was giving to everybody. You know, we all constantly feel we're giving to everybody but ourselves. What I have tried to do is figure out what moment in the day is for me. And sometimes that's a run to Target. And you know what? That's enough. Sometimes it's like pulling out my Bible app and reading something.
Come on, Bible apps.
So sometimes it's just, and sometimes it might be 15 minutes, but just my mentality, knowing that that 15-minute is mine, I don't care what it is, that's my moment. But there is definitely no perfect solution for all of that. And if, by the way, if somebody has that, kudos to them, but that's not my real life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Wanted to reiterate gratitude for all of the wonderful panelists during the week. My question is, how or what advice would you give to, and I'm trying to remove the word small business from my personal vocabulary when I think about my business.
I agree.
Good for you.
So how would you all encourage an entrepreneur who is scaling their business and obviously scaling capital? I know you mentioned, right, leveraging your resources, leveraging your family, but just ways that you all in the very, grassroots phase have been able to leverage a team and not necessarily have capital, but have a wonderful idea and jockey behind the vision.
What industry, what kind of business?
I'm scaling a CDFI, so a nonprofit that prioritizes on food sovereignty, but it is an umbrella for transformative justice, so really narrowing the ways that food sovereignty links to incarceration rates, education disparities, housing, and the bigger picture is just encouraging I live in a very 50-50 split community, so my Black and brown community, that the road to liberation is through ownership of the systems. And right now I've got really myself and some dedicated friends who, believe in my vision and passion, who are willing to offer whatever they help. But, when I come to sessions like this, I think I'm a little discouraged because I'm like, you've got exactly what I'm looking for, but I ain't got no money for you. So just wondering in ways that you would encourage her, and I know a lot of it is the storytelling, so really coming tight in what you believe in, but just ways that you all have been able to, like you said, leverage your resources and not be discouraged by, what you don't have.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll say a couple quick things, and I think one is, I don't know if you're interested in pursuing capital, I would look at like New Ventures Fund, what Rich Lou is doing. TPG Next is doing a lot of interesting things in this space, and they are not looking for the kind of returns you normally see in venture capital. BlackRock has a new fund as well, and I'm sure you're probably aware of the Goldman Sachs fund. So just making sure that you're aware, because there may be opportunities to have the capital to hire who you want to hire. I think the other thing is, you have a very interesting story, you have a compelling bearing. This is a small thing, but very local press is actually typically shows a better return than like national press for getting somebody to do an action, to buy something, to believe in something. So you concentrating on your story, and some founders are more always about their work and not necessarily the story. Telling your story will make it that much easier to go to somebody and say, look, I don't have a lot of money, but I will share with you, right, in the gains. But you can get that type of exposure a lot of times through the local news or local papers, and you don't need a big PR team. You can pitch the top 50 outlets in the 3 states around you, and for some reason, people will believe you more when you say, hey, check me out in these 6 features. Now will you come to me for a discount and work with me? We're gonna build this together, and we're gonna go pitch together. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's, traditional PR agencies, they know it's like, get pages in the trades, and that gets you to the New York Times. And I think it's the same kind of model, which is, and I definitely think that that's a huge way. Can I tell one quick story, and then I'm going to leave, because I know we're over time, but it came to me, so I was in LA the other day, and a guy comes up to me, we were at a dinner, he goes, look, I know who you are. I'm the CEO of a company called Con Creative. I don't know if you guys have heard of these guys, Con Creative. I said, oh, what do you do? He said, well, you got to understand my story. I was a drug dealer, ran $300 million up and down the West Coast, got arrested. After I came out, I decided that my real job when I was a drug dealer was CEO. So now I'm going to be a CEO of a creative agency. I said, okay. So he goes, look, I want you to meet some of my team members. So I meet him at this dinner, and he starts introducing me to his team members. One guy, he goes, this guy right here, he's a strategic planner. But you got to understand, before he got caught, he robbed 28 banks. And I'm like, Okay, he goes, but he understands how to build a plan. He works under pressure. He understands deadlines. I was like, okay. So he built this business where he's got people who are incarcerated now who he employs, right? And then formerly incarcerated who are out and he employs. And he does things like, oh, you just launched a new fintech property and you're worried about security? I got brothers that actually know how to break into that. Let me go hit. I was like, so my only point is, if he can create, and I mean, he's doing so well. I mean, we're hiring him. If he can create this, I was like, I gotta hire you on that. I'm like, I need this planner, dude. What happened on the 28th job? That's the real question. But anyway, if he can create something like that, my only point is there is no barrier to what's possible except for our own imagination. So that's all I want to tell. Sorry.
Philly, let's give it up for our panel behind the brand.
I love
and
that.
Real quick, if you have a website, a IG page where people can follow and check you out, please share that in closing.
DSIMS, just DIASIMMS, same on all platforms.
For me, it's Lise Joseph, LISJOSEPH, on all platforms.
I'm Bonin, BONIN, on all platforms.
And I'm Danielle Jeter. You can find me at DP Jeter on all platforms. Thank you so much.